Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Dravidian Does History. How are we today, Alan?
We are doing awesome.
Okay,
How are you?
the usual.
Okay, that's a very good answer.
Yeah, I'm chatty and quippy and exhausted, and I hate people. Ergo, why we're doing this over Zoom?
Yes, you would never entertain me in your home for more
No,
than 30 minutes.
I entertain nobody in my home for more than 30 minutes.
Mm,
hmm So,
yes, let's
as
dive into it.
let's dive into the topic for today, which is last time you asked me a very interesting question. Would you like to repeat it?
With my memory of a goldfish, that was a very bold move on your end. But yes, I do remember the question because it
See?
was actually an interesting question.
Exactly.
Uh, so you mentioned in the previous video about how there were separate princely states that existed throughout the land, which is now India
Yeah.
as a nation. And you talked about the idea of India for the outside world to the people living in the subcontinent
Yeah.
or South Asian region and all of that. So my question was, when we look at it, we see that there is a cultural, linguistic, food related, a lot of different common threads that run throughout the today's India and also into Pakistan, Bangladesh, and all of that. And when it existed before it became the Republic of India or Republic of different countries, did they coexist well with each other? Were they at war with each other? Were they strong allies against invaders? Were there any juicy betrayal stories that we need to know about? Especially, I'm pretty sure there must be something when the British came, one kingdom must have betrayed the other
So,
kingdom so that they would be taken over by
yeah.
Britain. So, sorry, the English company. Oh my God, some
East India
company, I forget.
Company.
East India Company, yes, that one.
Yeah.
So, like stuff like that. Like, how was the relationship between different princely states or kingdoms that existed within the land today we call India?
Okay. So that's a fairly straightforward answer I can give uh, because again, once again, we're positioning it in the idea that India was a singular identity and it coexisted with each other. And it was all la 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 la, like a Bollywood song with Shah Rukh Khan and Salman Khan and Amir Khan coexisting with all of these wonderful people. When in reality, um, South Asia was a collection of independent states who saw themselves always as independent states. But just like the European Union is today, France and Germany are different states, but they share certain cultural identities, but they are also allies against another third state, which would be Russia right now. But they were also against each other during certain periods of time. For example, the Second World War, right? So a similar situation existed throughout the history of India, right from the beginning in the period after the Indus Valley civilization, up until even 1947 when Indian Republic came into existence per se. Like the Dominion of India happened in 1947 and then the Republic in 1950. So through in that whole about 3,000 years, all the states that existed within India, they consider themselves independent, sovereign states. And the general trend was you would ally with get ally with some, you would have an alliance with somebody who you thought was your friend, but your enemy's enemy was your friend, but your friend's enemy was also your enemy, but they could be your friends. It's that kind of Game of Thronesian situation. It was always like that. There was never a utopian Ramarajya situation. But even then, in the Ramarajya, you see that Rama had to go to war with Lanka to get his wife back. And then he left her behind. That's a different story. But again, there was never a utopian situation where every state in India coexisted with each other in perfect harmony. This isn't a choir. This is a jazz band. Every state, every instrument operated by itself, but somehow there was a fruitful coalition at times. So if we think about specific examples, for example, one of the biggest examples that we can think of is how did the Persian states first set up a store in India? We think of it as an outsider coming in and invading all of India, and then our heroes standing against them, and but then getting steamrolled or betrayed by their allies. But in reality, what happened was these invaders, as we call them, those independent states from a different part of the world and a different cultural zone came in and attacked one small kingdom who did not agree with another small kingdom. So they did not ally together. So piecemeal by piecemeal, they got small pieces and eventually they straddled the whole northern India. It was never, oh, we have to join together forces and fight the forces of evil. It wasn't Avengers Assemble. It was just a bunch of states who were self important, who only thought about themselves most of the time, saw an enemy coming in, sometimes allied with his neighbor, sometimes joined the outside force and fought against his neighbor for wealth, for gold, for more regions. And that trend continued. We, from our vantage point today, think of them as invaders. For example, when Mahmud of Ghazni came in from what is today Persia or Iran or Afghanistan, and then conquered regions in northern India, we forget that at exactly the same time, this is in the 1020s, right? Exactly the same time, another person was invading what is today Bengal and defeating kingdoms there. They were doing exactly the same thing in that they both came in for loot, they both came in for wealth, they both came in not for grabbing land, they came for the riches of the temples and the people. One of them was Mahmud of Ghazni. The other invader was Rajendra Chola the first of the Chola Empire. But we perceive of them differently because, from our vantage point, Mahmud of Ghazni is an invader from the outside, but Rajendra Chola is ours. But for somebody living in the Indo-Gangetic plain, they can't really tell the difference. These are both people from different cultural spheres who speak languages that they don't understand really, because Rajendra Chola would be speaking Old Tamil. Even though he is well versed in Sanskrit, he would have been speaking Tamil. His people would have been speaking Tamil, and they would have looked different to the people of Bengal. They would have looked different to the people of Ghazni, right? So these are three different entities engaging, but there's a real possibility that somebody who was in Kannauj at the time saw the attacks that were happening from Ghazni and escaped to Bengal and got invaded by Rajendra Chola, right? From the fire into the from the stove in I can't even use a simile today. From the tawa into the fire, basically, right?
Yeah, it's like death everywhere. Yes,
Exactly.
sort of.
So, but because from our perspective, because Tamil Nadu is part of our culture and our country today, we see as one of them as invader, the other one as just expansionism. He just went to the Ganga to get his holy mother and bring the river back to Tamil Nadu to build his imperial city, Gangaikonda Cholapuram. But Mahmud of Ghazni, what he did was essentially the same thing. He came to North India, took the riches, took them back to Ghazni, and beautified his city. It's essentially the same thing. But because of our perception, we think of it differently.
Wait, my one question is
Yeah.
for with regards to this. Both of them did not intend on conquering the land and the
No,
people,
no,
not an expansion of their kingdom,
no.
but it was purely theft, like
Loot.
looting. It was just like
Exactly.
go there, kill a bunch of people, get a lot of money, maybe a bunch of slaves, and then bring them back.
Exactly,
Or
because both of these are pre modern states whose survival is based on imperial expansionism, for not just based on land grab, it's based on sound economic principles for them of getting as much wealth with as little effort from other places as possible. So, Ghazni, think about it this way: Ghazni, which is in present day Afghanistan, is a relatively poor place when it comes to natural resources, but trade passes through it. But that's not enough. They see what is Hindustan essentially at the time, or India, if you want to use the term, essentially as this rich reserve bank of money and wealth. India has always been rich in resources and people. So there's always been a huge array of wealth that has invited other people to come and take it away. Whoever has the strength takes it away. And this has always been the state within India as well, states fighting each other for each other's wealth, right? So that's what Mahmud of Ghazni did. He came in, looted most of North India, destroyed a bunch of temples because temples where wealth was stored, and then put a sheen of Islamic conquest on it by saying, oh, I'm doing this for the god, even though that wasn't really the principle. That was just a propaganda tool, took the wealth and went back to his kingdom. Similarly, Rajendra Chola the First, when he invaded North India, he wasn't thinking about how much land can I grab. He positioned it as I'm going to the land where the holy Ganga is because it's the holiest river in India. I want to make sure that my legacy is the best of any king that ever existed. I'm going to bring the wealth and riches from Ganga and bring it to my city. I'm going to reorient the power structure in India to orient towards me. That's why when he built his city, he didn't name it after any of his gods. He named it after himself. The city's name was Gangai Konda Cholapuram, which means the city of the king or the Chola who grabbed the riches from the Ganges. The same way, when he built the temple to mark his grand theft, sorry, the grand conquest, he named it the temple at Gangaikonda Cholapuram. The temple itself is called Gangaikonda Choleshwara, which doesn't use any of the names of Lord Shiva, who is the idol there. The god is referred to as the Lord of the Chola who grabbed the Ganga and brought her to his city, right? That's not entirely the most religious of identities, but he put a religious sheen on it by building the temple. He was sacrosancting it by saying, hey, I did this all to bring the Ganga home, when in fact, what I needed was all the wealth and the prestige. So, operating in two different spheres, like Rajendra Chola existed in the Sanskritic sphere or the Indosphere, as I discussed in the book, and the Ghaznavids occupied the Persianate sphere. It's a different entire entity, and their ideas are different, but essentially, what they both did was bring wealth from rich lands back to their kingdom, beautified it, built temples, mosques, and enrich the tradespeople in Afghanistan, which is the main trade route of the time, and in Southeast for towards the Southeast Asia, the Chola kingdom was the greatest trading partner. So essentially, it's the same thing, but because our understanding is different, we treat them differently, right? And it again applies to any of the kingdoms that existed throughout Indian history. The Mauryas, we think of them as the great Indian empire, right? But they were in conflict with their neighbors all the time. Like the greatest story of the Mauryas that we know of is the establishment of the dynasty by Chandragupta Maurya, and then Ashoka turning to Buddhism after his defeat of Kalinga, right? But when you think about it, what really happened is two extraordinary military commanders invading their neighboring states. That's what happened. They fought their neighbors. They murdered people to grab land. That's essentially what happened. Chandragupta Maurya was a minor noble at the periphery of what was at the time the greatest state in India, which is Magadha, with the imperial city of Pataliputra, which was established by Ajatashatru. That's why I start with Ajatashatru, because Pataliputra was the biggest, most prosperous city in the world at the time, established by Ajatashatru, right? And it remained the center of Indian kingship up until the end of the Guptas in the 6th century CE. And then it shifts to Kanauj for a bit, and then goes down south for a bit. And then my story in the first book ends with Gangaikonda Cholapuram because it becomes one of the most prosperous cities in the world, right? So, but when Chandragupta Maurya attacks the Nanda kings in Magadha, he's not attacking an ally. He's basically invading his neighbor, right? He's not doing it because of the purity of the heart. He's not doing it for religious reasons. He is a power hungry monarch. And what do monarchs do? They invade, they conquer, right? No matter how much nationalistic pride we might have because of their identity as two great kings, the fact of the matter still remains that this existed in a time when everybody was attacking each other for their wealth. And this continues throughout history. But depending on which lens you use and who the people are fighting against, we can tell the story differently. Like I know I might have pissed people off by comparing Mahmud of Ghazni to Rajendra Chola, but the facts are the facts. Feelings don't matter in this situation. But as an Indian, of course, I have more affinity toward Rajendra Chola. But then again, taking the example of Rajendra Chola, if I may, he did what Mahmud of Ghazni did and invaded Southeast Asia. But we mention it with a lot of pride. But when you look at it from an objective perspective, or even a subjective perspective of somebody from Southeast Asia, that's nothing to be proud of. Realistically, he did essentially what Mahmud of Ghazni did. He went there unprovoked and attacked the the kingdom there, Srivijaya, and destroyed the capital, took the heavy gold doors from there, murdered the royal family, murdered lots of tradesmen, controlled everything, took the loot, brought it back. Right? Srivijaya Empire, which was the most powerful empire of that region at the time, collapsed because of it. The dynasty died out, and Srivijaya, which was the uh, most significant trading empire of Southeast Asia, vanished, and the whole region kind of went back into agricultural systems instead of being a trading hub of the world. Is that a good thing? Not really from their perspective, not really from a global perspective, but from an Indian perspective, it's something to be proud of because it's done by somebody from our place, right?
I have a question.
Yes.
This dismantling of Srivijaya, the kingdom, did that on the Chola king a trading port of his own? Like, was he managed to like, because you mentioned that Srivijaya was like a major hotspot for
Yeah, yeah,
trade,
yeah.
but with the dismantle of that, did he get an advantage of
He,
like
he did.
trades being
He did.
routed to? So it
He-
was also a power move, like
Every
an economical power move,
every
right? Mhm.
empire's need for money is what drives it, and self-aggrandization is also what drives it. So Rajendra Chola, we don't have exact evidence to support the argument, but Anirudh Kanisetti's new book, um, he talks about this in more detail. I haven't had the opportunity to read it yet, but he talks more about this particular episode and everything. But I mentioned it briefly in the first volume because I deal with the Cholas at the end of the book as well. But basically, the trade guilds that were active in India at the time, they traded around the world. And Srivijaya, because it's a separate entity, they had to pay
Mm.
taxes there, they had to pay for the shipping and living there and all that, right? So there's a big possibility that they coerced Rajendra Chola into attacking Srivijaya so that trade would become much more easier and much more profitable for the Cholas and their partisans and participants rather than the Srivijayans. So when Rajendra Chola invaded Srivijaya and destroyed that infrastructure, he did leave his own agents there. He did not control it directly. He left his agents there to make sure that his trade interests were taken care of and that the trade with China, which is the other major state in Asia at the time, was more direct and it was established. There have been other stories made up and have been brought up to kind of support this argument that the Sri Vijayans went to the Chinese court and tried to embarrass the Cholas, and the Cholas attacked Sri Vijaya because of it. But these are, again, rationalizations that have been made up by people after the fact. But when we look at it, it's very clear that trade and monetary gain and prestige were the driving factors. Here's another, although I don't want to harp on the Cholas so much, here's another fact. They attacked every single one of their neighbors and invaded them, never really conquered them, but looted them. And that applies to Kerala as well. They destroyed ports in Kerala, including I forget what the name of it. There was a chalet. I forget what it is. It was a Buddhist trade destination. It was attacked and destroyed so that the Cholas can use that port as a trading network westwards. The Cholas then also attacked. Again, this is during the lifetime of Rajendra Chola, who is the greatest of the Cholas. Gangaikonda Cholan, as he is. So he also attacked the eastern Chalukyas, he attacked the western Chalukyas, um, and he again amassed a lot of wealth from these campaigns because The existence of most medieval states relied on agriculture, trade, and invasions. That's how they operated. And then using that wealth to self aggrandize the dynasty is how they survived. That's no different to any of the dynasties that existed in India and around the world.
That was fantastic.
I love history because it reveals so much about our past, but it also reveals so much about ourselves because what we give priority. Because as a
Hmm.
Malayali, I should be proud of one of the Chera Chola Pandya triumvirates succeeding so spectacularly. Although in reality, the Cheras never quite attained the level of success the Pandyas and the Cholas did, we are a Tamil culture essentially, right? But when you look at it objectively, it's not that different from any other state, be it the Delhi Sultanate, be it the Mughals, be it the Deccan Sultanates, be it the Ghaznavids, be it the Ghurids, be it the Mongols. It's all essentially the same, but based on perceptions and where you're from, you change the narrative to fit your story.
Hmm. Okay, I have one more question.
Absolutely.
Maybe I'm not exactly sure if this really comes to you, but maybe you would have an idea.
Yeah,
Earlier, you mentioned how the Hindu religion that is being practiced in southern part of India and northern part of India are different.
yeah,
And to this day, we do see differences in that. Like certain festivals are more important down south, which is not up north, and vice
yeah.
versa. But again, with the modern day thing and the cross migration throughout, we tend to celebrate everything all at once. Like the marriages in South India
Mhm.
started having haldi as part of their celebration, which I don't think was a thing until 5 years ago or maybe 10 years ago.
Mhm.
It's very recent.
Yeah.
And it might turn into a tradition
Down
that
south,
we
yeah.
will, yeah, down south, it will probably turn into that. And down south, again, Telugu people might have it. Like I don't think Kerala ever had it. Maybe certain sects or
Yeah.
certain groups might, but generally,
Yeah.
you get what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So, why do you think there was this difference in a common religion or common culture? Because Hinduism was a culture first before it became a religion. Where did that
The bifurcation,
division? Yes, yes, that is
I
the word.
think we are because I think we're thinking about it the wrong way. We think about Hinduism splitting into different sections, when in reality, it's the different sections got absorbed into what we call Hinduism today. When Hinduism, as a term, is fairly new, but the ideas are quite ancient, but again, multifarious and constantly changing. I think it could be a video by itself, so I'm not going to tackle it in detail today because again we discuss it as we go along because in the different chapters of the book I touch upon different aspects of it and the evolution of what we call Hinduism. That's also part of why Lords of India is called Lords of India and not Kings of India, right? But in the simplest way, it's because what we call Hinduism evolved over 2,500 years at least, could be considered 3,000 years. In that period, it evolved from earlier forms. It amalgamated everything that it came in contact with. It took from a little cult here, it took from another tribal religion there, it took from a regional religion here, and amassed it all together into this huge canvas. Think of it as, again, William Dalrymple so wonderfully put it, think of it as a huge canvas, and each thread was woven into it to beautify it. And the whole picture looks magnificent and it can be overwhelming to look at. But if you go into the details, you see how different each thread is, how different each idea is. Like, for example, down south, we have the Sarpakava, right? And the Bhagavati temples where there is no roof for Vanadevatas and such. In North India, that's not really a thing because these are regional Dravidian deities who were absorbed into the overall Brahminical religion. And again, Brahminical religion, I use that term because we can't really call it Vedic religion or even Puranic religion. They are different forms of the same thing. And again, it's an amalgamation of different streams. What we call Hinduism is really a collection of individual religious practices with a common shared thread, right? So that's the simplest answer I can give to that question, but we will discuss it in more detail in the upcoming videos so that we can discuss it in more detail. I want to get into the nitty-gritty of it. Yes?
Okay. Um,
I think,
Thank you for that.
thank you. I think
But
that's
before
all.
we end, no, before we end, I need a random fact, a fun
Okay.
fact,
Okay.
something that I can look forward to in the next video.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
a fun fact, just the fact, no explanation.
Okay.
Keep me wondering
Oh,
or
do you want me to
something.
offer a fun fact?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought
Give
you were going
give
to
me
ask
a
me.
no. Give
Okay.
me a fun fact which I can ponder over, and you will explain how it came about or something in the
Okay.
next video.
Um, why do you think Ayyappan as a god exists in Kerala? Is one of the most popular gods in Kerala. He lives in a hermitage in the wilderness, and he's again, his shrine is one of the most popular in South India. But most people in North India have no idea of such a god. And the unique religious practices practiced in Shabarimala are, if you really think about it, it applies to a different religion entirely. How do you think these two came together, and what do you think that process was like?
Whoa, that's a huge one. That's a good one.
Yeah. But again, it's these interesting questions that we need, right? So I'm going to keep you interested in our conversations by dropping that little nugget. So think about it. Don't do any research.
Yeah.
Or you could, and you can come up
I
with
don't
more
have the
arguments.
time for it.
I know. So we'll catch up in the next episode where we'll start with this topic, this particular point, and we'll go from there. Or maybe we won't. Maybe I'll wait till I reach the point in history where we need to talk about it.
Hmm.
You never know. So we'll catch up next time on another episode of Dravidian Does History. Have a good night.
Good day.